Okay, so it's kind of two parts. The first part is going to be more like establishing kind of goal setting and how to set the proper goals here in the new year. The second part is a little bit more dialed in and a little bit more in the weeds on like strength training specifically. So, obviously we're here to help people establish strength training routines, but at the end of the day, what helps people generally stick to their routines is when they own their routine and they have that autonomy and they create, again, with the help of us, they created it. They understand why you're doing 8 reps instead of 15 reps, stuff like that. That's what's going to kind of lead to the best autonomy and sticking with your program and not just being a resolutioner. So that's kind of what the two parts here are what we're going to talk about. Um, whoops. All right. So kind of just starting with a thought starter here with the question of what does being quote fit mean to you? And why do you want to be fit? Um, a fitness routine means something different to all of us. It could be running a few miles every day. It could be 10 minutes a day, just finding it where you can for a quick workout, and both are totally fine. Um, I guess just start to think in your mind, what does being fit mean to you? And then the second question, why do you want to be fit? Dig deep, see if you can kind of catch yourself. When you think of one answer, ask yourself why and see if you can get kind of, I call it the why train, see how many whys you can get down the road in your mind before you like get down to a really actual deep and less superficial answer to kind of peel back those layers of motivation. Um, so I guess, I mean, to me, uh, being fit and where I'm at in my routine means working out or, whether that's strength training or cardio, getting my heart rate up more times a week than I don't. So, let's say there's 7 days in a week. That means I need to be at least doing four. That's currently what being fit means to me and why. Um, I mean, I definitely have some superficial, I think like most people, there's superficial stuff, but I think for me, as I'm gonna have a kid soon, that kind of puts things into perspective, wanting to be healthier longer and being able to move, with your kids and chase around and all that good stuff. So kind of an idea just of what I think of as a fitness professional, but again, I probably very similar answers to a lot of other people. Um, so just keep that in your mind as we go through and when you think about turning the page and setting some goals. Um, so the next kind of question is what's keeping us from doing it? And what's getting in the way and what's going to help us probably get my face out of there. Um, so what's going to help everybody is SMART goals. It's a pretty popular thing. This isn't just a fitness thing. This is a universal thing. It's SMART goals, specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time sensitive. So there's also like I've heard of hard goals and whoop goals before, just not as common. So hard is like heartfelt, animated, required, and difficult. Um, those are typically more like goals that utilize emotional connection and like visual if you're a strong if you like to visualize things to create more of a sense of urgency. That's kind of what I've seen hard goals used as before. And then whoop is WOOP, wish outcome obstacle plan. um, and that kind of fuses the two techniques of visualization and then this kind of more implementation intention with a smart goal. So SMART goal doesn't have to be the only answer, right? That's the one that's the most popular. So that's what I'm going to talk on. So at the top, a goal without a plan is just a wish. I think that kind of resonates. Like, I'd love to lose 10 pounds or whatever, or have more energy. But if I haven't made a plan for that goal, then it's really just a thought or a wish. So you can see right there, we don't have to go through the exact definition, but specific, the more specific the goal is, the better the more likely we are to stick to them. Measurable, having something quantitative, not just qualitative. So you could just say, I want to eat more vegetables, but in this example, 3 servings of vegetables is going to help you stick to that goal. And even going more specific to times per week and stuff like that. Um, Actionable. So attaching a specific action to your goal helps you identify how you're going to achieve what you want to do. So I want to grocery prep and or grocery shop and prep my vegetables on Sunday for the week. Again, actionable, get as specific as possible. And then realistic, if you set a goal of working out 5 days a week and you've been working out zero for the past year, odds are you're going to fail, right? So you might start off really well, but that's what usually happens to a lot of resolutioners is you went from 0 to 100, and that's just not sustainable. So setting a realistic goal, like this one says, if you're only eating one vegetable a day, getting to getting to three to getting to five or whatever the recommendation is not going to be very realistic, or you might only do it for a short time. And then time sensitive, give yourself a good deadline that's also falls into that. I think that realistic category as well. So that's a quick kind of brush through of what is a SMART goal. Um, some common barriers here, barriers to entry. By far the most common ones, time and motivation. So people say it's hard to find the time, I'm just not motivated, etc. So these are generally by far the most two common. Um, and I think work-life balance and as well as like technology can always put us in a tough spot. Everything's so right at hand. So whether it's social media or streaming, whatever, we're always inundated with things that can like really quickly eat up our time. So we got to be able to prioritize and organize and find the time. Motivation, you can start the new year really motivated, but it does tend to run dry, and we can lose that spark pretty quickly to keep our routine going. Um, whether that's lack of results because maybe you set a poor goal that or not a realistic goal, so you thought you were going to see these results within a month and that just wasn't realistic for where you're at, or maybe you lose confidence because of that. A lot of different things that can negatively affect our motivation. So we're going to walk through a couple of things that'll kind of help get through these barriers a little bit to help with our routines. So we'll start with time. Um, so I mean, being quote unquote fit may not take as long as you think, but we don't want to get carried away in either direction. Think it's going to take forever, or this is going to be super easy. So how can we find that work-life balance? And can we just make time wherever it is throughout the day, whether it's 5 minutes or an hour, like any time is better than no time. So, um, and you might think kind of 5 minutes of working out isn't going to help, but in the long run, it is going to help because it's going to keep you in the routine. It's going to keep you feel that sense of accomplishment. And we've seen a lot of studies, obviously, and stuff that shows even a minimum of 5 minutes of just going to walk can help you maintain that routine and just feel better throughout the day, because that consistency is key, because that leads to a routine. Routine means to a good chance that you're going to cut down the time you need to be more consistent, and eventually it's going to become more of a priority in your life compared to Netflix, etc., social media time, phone time, work, etc. Um, come on. So a little bit in terms of like putting it into kind of these squares or quadrants for prioritizing stuff. Um, so you kind of see important, urgent, less important. So that top left, we got to do that right away. And then moving over, let's schedule this so it's on our calendar. We're gonna do it. Is it something we can delegate? And then is this something we just shouldn't be doing? So kind of gets into time management. Um, you know, when we manage our time, we all tend to feel better. When your calendar's organized and you know what your day is going to look like, we tend to feel better. So, kind of looking through this lens, I think important, are the responsibilities that are going to contribute to whatever goal you set. So those are what's going to fall into that important category. We got to get this done or our goals are not going to get achieved. So, the urgent, kind of defining that as responsibilities as well that demand your immediate attention. Um, so I think just putting whether it's drawing this on your own or when I send this out later, put some of these things, put your daily responsibilities into these quadrants and kind of see how they land and start to get that work-life balance. Especially, the don't do watching TV and stuff like that. But I'm not going to act like that's not important, brain time, a part of recovery, but there's probably better things that we can do. So I think the study that this got pulled from found that most people spend too much time in quadrant one and in quadrant three. And they found that the quadrant three activities disrupted like our flow state and kind of take us out of our rhythm and our routines. So the idea would be to reschedule those items, or as this says, delegate these items, or if you can, move them into the don't do and let's get rid of them. Um, so this is a good take home exercise as well, to work on. Protecting it. So this is kind of like protecting our time or our schedule. So blocking your calendar, which is something we do. That's why we have those Outlook invites to get them on your calendar. We know that's half the battle with corporate individuals is if there's open time, your boss or somebody feels like they can take it. So we want to try to fill that with things that are going to help us accomplish our goals. Don't force it. If you know it's a busy time every single day, like generally that's kind of predictable. So we want to avoid that time. Don't try to set a goal during or you're going to go work out over lunch every day if you know you never have your lunches free. Um, so let's not complicate that by throwing our fitness routine into it if we already know that's a busy time. Number three, enlist the help of others, accountability, whether it's us, family, friends, get them involved and try to tell them you're establishing this routine. How can they help you, shield your time and protect your time as well? Or maybe it's a coworker too, somebody that is can be responsible for you scheduling meetings or something like that. Maybe they can put in those reminders to help you. Because accountability is a big part of it. Um, that kind of leads into the power of others here. When you connect with others, you're going to find that camaraderie and the accountability is going to become easier. So it's kind of been a proven way of making fitness a social experience in terms of leading to better results. And I think you see that with like our group fitness classes as well in terms of a real world experience. You connect with a coach during those classes, but then you're also connecting with the other participants and you almost build kind of that social contract like, oh, where is so and so? Even if you don't work for the same company or you literally only see them twice a week, you start to wonder where they are, why they didn't show up. So finding a group and not worrying about the experience, find a buddy or meet someone new. Go digital if you can to connect quickly and easily. All just quick little tips that can lean into the power of others in terms of helping you stay accountable, even if you wouldn't really think they're people that are going to help you stay accountable. Keep it going. So reconnect with your intrinsic motivation for number one here. Intrinsic motivation. So those less superficial things that motivate you are what's going to make your routine last. If it's more extrinsic, like I just want to look better, those tend to not stick. Um, doesn't mean they can't be part of it, but your deep drivers need to be intrinsic. Like I want to be there for my kids, stuff like that's going to make your routine stick better than I want to look better. So, simple reminders, putting something, a handwritten note somewhere on your desk on the fridge that can help with those intrinsic motivations and reconnecting with those. Like remind yourself why you're doing this. Um, Reshuffling your to-do list that can help you find some extra time, help you reprioritize what's important to you to accomplish your new goal, and then trying something new. Keeping stuff fresh is always important. Like even the most experienced or fit people, I think will tell you that they get bored by a routine. So I think that's important. Um, so some action items that you can take away from here, writing out your SMART goal, identifying 1 to 2 barriers, like we talked about in those quadrants, that when you come up with your goal and the routine you want to set, and then also get those solutions started. Grab a friend for a workout if you do work out this week, or go play pickleball or whatever with a friend. Block 2 to 3 days this week on your calendar to prioritize your fitness, whether that's a stretch break, movement break, anything like that. Schedule a walking meeting. Okay. So again, that's probably not directly part of your fitness routine, but could it become part of your routine where I have a Wednesday meeting with Bob every week? Like, can we make this a a walking routine because there's really not, we're not like sharing slides or anything like that. So can we make this something where we're going on a walk instead of just sitting at our computer? That kind of goes into tips at work, walking or biking to work if possible. Parking your car further away for more steps. So this kind of gets into daily movement, which is going to help you feel like it becomes part of your routine and that you're prioritizing fitness. Standing desks, taking breaks throughout the day, keeping water at your desk to stay hydrated. All this stuff is good to stay in motion. Um, Starting off, a lot of studies show starting movement right away, as well as like direct sunlight right in the morning, can really help. Obviously, hard this time of year in Minnesota to do the sunlight part because you can't go outside. But that's where like vitamin D or supplements or stuff like that can come into play. But a lot of these things are simple and just will add more daily movement to your routine. And that's going to make your real routines, like your fitness routines, feel a little bit less daunting. So you're not going to be coming into those tired and felt like and stiff because you haven't moved all day. Um, so this one will kind of fly through a little bit more diving into strength training specifically. So I'm calling this understand your workout program, but most people understand cardio. Obviously, we could go in the weeds about training heart rate zones and stuff like that, but I feel like what the thing that people get wrong the most is strength training because A, they don't know the form or whatever. They don't know what muscles are being worked. And then B, they don't understand the why behind it. Why am I doing, as I mentioned earlier, 3 sets instead of five? Or why am I doing 10 instead of 15, etc. And we don't need to get too sciencey, but we are going to touch on that just a little bit. So first and foremost, what is strength training? Also called resistance training. The use of resistance um, for muscular contraction to build strength, anaerobic endurance, and or size of muscle. So again, just different goals right there within the definition. Am I training to get my muscles bigger? Are they? Do I want them? Do I have a weekend of moving people's furniture? They're going to have to be firing for a long period of time. Okay. ACSM recommends doing at least 2 days of strength training per week. That is the bare minimum to go with what doesn't include their cardio recommendations or exercise, which is 150 minutes of moderate intensity per week or 90 minutes of vigorous intensity per week. So that this is an addition to those recommendations for cardio. Benefits of strength training, pretty obvious, make you stronger, but also reducing risk of injury, promoting weight loss, better body comp, so less fat, more lean body mass, and then boosting your energy, bone density, very important as we get older and a little less mobile, and then flexibility, balance, coordination, posture, stuff that you might not think about flexibility and balance from strength training, but if you come to our classes, we like to do a lot of balance work and stuff like that because we think it's super underdone and super important. Common misconceptions. You see a lot of these, a lot of them have to do with women. So like men can only do strength training, or I'm going to get bulky is a very common one we hear from women. And I like to refer them to one of our members who used to be a female like power lifter slash bodybuilder. And I say, go talk to her and you can hear about how much effort it takes to actually bulk up as a woman. It's just science. Like the amount of work you have to put in to look that way is very hard. And then the spot reducing is often a common one too. Like, oh, I want to get rid of my belly fat, stuff like that. So um, those are some kind of misconceptions that will hopefully clear up a little bit. So the workout itself. Um, so we like to think about movement-based training. So instead of saying, I want to be stronger in the chest and the triceps, whatever, um, if you this quote is a good one. If we train muscles, we forget movements, but if we target movements, we won't forget the muscles. So the vast majority when you see people working out in the gym are in a single plane. So right, a bicep curl, just up and down. That's one plane of motion or a single joint just at the elbow. So how can we do multiple movements at once or target specific movements that maybe apply to real life or an activity? Or just again making more the most of our time by doing multiple movements at once over just specific muscles or muscle groups. Um, so movement over muscles. Types of training. Functional training, super popular right now. Training that helps you perform daily activities more easily. We like to focus on a lot of that. Training for hypertrophy, that's or strength, that's generally going to be the people you see doing bicep curls and stuff like that. Training with the intent to increase muscle size or to gain additional muscle mass. Training for strength is when you actually want to feel stronger. Important to note, strength and hypertrophy are not necessarily the same. Hypertrophy is the size of the muscle, and then the amount of it. Strength is, I might not look the biggest, but I can maybe bench press more than someone else who looks bigger. Training for endurance develops the body's and the muscles' respiratory capabilities, and then strength to sustain over a long period of physical activity. So maybe that's your CrossFitters that are doing these long competitions or even a marathon. They have to have some muscle endurance, obviously, as well. They just won't have as much of the hypertrophy and stuff like that. So reps, sets, rest, kind of three key items when you're making a workout. Repetitions is what rep stands for. This is the action of completing exercise. Sets, the number of cycles of those reps that you're going to do. And then rest is the time in between your sets. So we'll get into this little table next here. So some training themes. These are just some from Exos. You'll find different, everybody does studies on what rep range you need to be, what percent of your maximum should you be doing. You're going to see conflicting and not conflicting. Everything's going to be generally aligned, but everybody likes to pretend that they're experts on this. This is what we recommend. When you're just starting out, let's say foundational, 6 to 10, not caring too much about it, intensity. Let's just get the form down. Let's get moving. 2 to 4 sets, 6 to 12 reps, pretty broad, pretty vague, not worrying too much about tempo. So tempo, we talk about how fast you're lowering it or bringing it up. And then your rest, like go again when you feel good, right? But if we do have specific goals like hypertrophy, strength, and endurance, you can see it does get more specific where science shows how you're going to train those systems a bit more effectively. So again, reps, like I have 10 reps of a bicep curl and I'm going to do that for 4 sets. So I'll do 10, rest, do 10 more all the way through my full 4 sets and then move on to my next exercise. That's kind of breaking down that intensity and set and rep schemes. And then the rest part, obviously very important. In general, for most of the stuff we're doing in classes and stuff like that, we're going to think about that 30 to 60 seconds, 1 to 2 minutes. We're not maxing out, right? We don't need to do 85 plus of our percent RM in class generally. So we don't need to be resting for 5 minutes at a time to let our muscles fully recover. That's a little bit different training that we don't spend too much time on here. And then often neglected, the warm up, right? Warming up properly. Especially before strength training, a lot of people tend to just go walk on the treadmill or elliptical and then come right out. Like that's not preparing your body. That it doesn't mean it can't be part of your warm up, but that's not preparing yourself for the movement you're about to do. So soft tissue work. So that's the foam rolling or trigger point rolling, doing dynamic stretching. So shoulder circles instead of this. Okay. So dynamic stretching over static. Static tends to be a little bit better for cooling down, stretching out those tightened muscles, and then just raising your core temperature. So maybe that's where I'm going to go on the treadmill just for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, get a walking, get my heart rate up, get the blood flowing, but I'm not going to. That also means I'm going to spend time doing soft tissue and dynamic stretching as well to get properly activated. Proper technique. So having the proper technique, we know this is the biggest question. People are like, I feel like I'm doing this wrong. And often they probably are, but that's why we're there. It improves your performance. It's going to ensure you're progressing the muscles you want to progress, right? So if you have questions on technique, come down to the gym, take a class, work with one of us, YouTube it, right? There's a lot of good information out there. I'm not going to act like there's not. Obviously, make sure you talk to somebody or it's somebody with a lot of subscribers at least that you've vetted them a little bit. And also just watching yourself in the mirror. Often if you think something looks or feels wrong, it probably is, right? Because usually the natural or the way you're supposed to do something generally shouldn't hurt. There's a difference between pain and like feeling, oh, my muscle's under tension and I'm working hard. So feel free to reach out if anybody ever has questions on technique for certain exercises, or if there's one you're doing where it's like always like when I do this, it always hurts. Like, let's see if There could be something wrong, right? But there also could be just you're not doing it correctly. Whoops. So breaking kind of nitty gritty here. Training splits. So this is like how often you're lifting, days a week, and then the patterns you're going to train throughout the week. So when setting up your split, consider the following. How experienced are you? How many days do you want to train? And how are you won't know till you do it, but how are you going to respond to that training? You might feel super sore. You need to take a day off the next day, which we always recommend sort of a rest day before, or do a different muscle group if you don't want to take a full rest day. Days of the week, keeping your goals in mind as well. So here's some examples. Maybe you just have a total body day. You do a little bit of everything. And then what we like to do at Exos is kind of these push-pull splits. So upper push refers to our chest, triceps, shoulders. Think about pushing a box away from you or over your head. Okay. And then we have our pulling motions in the upper body, pulling something towards you. That's generally going to be our back and our biceps, right? And then if we think about lower body, pushing something away from us with our legs, that tends to be a bit more quad dominated. And then if we pull something with our heel towards our butt, that's going to be a bit more glutes and hamstrings. There are exercises where we can really get those specific muscles firing. But if you think about doing a squat, your whole leg's working, right? It's not, but there is different stances and where places to put the weight to make it more quad dominant or whatever. So those are examples of, you know, maybe 3 times a week. One day I'm doing upper push, one day I'm doing upper pull, lower body, and then I'll get to vice versa, stuff like that. So different ways. Again, I kind of went over a bunch of these, but some push examples. You see a push up, you start with the ground towards you, you're pushing the weight away, a chest press, a shoulder press. Okay. So pushing something away from you, chest, triceps, shoulders, generally the big groups there. All right. Pulling. So rowing, right? Bent over rows, lat pull down, pull ups, pulling from further towards the body. Okay. Lower body push. We talked about squats. Um, that's pretty much what you see here. Lunges, right? That's a split squat on the bottom right there. Elevated rear foot. So those tend to be a bit more quad dominated, but when you squat, you're going to feel your glutes, you're going to feel your calves, right? But there's different ways we can make different muscle groups fire a bit more. Lower body pull. So that's going to be hamstring and glute. You think about doing glute bridges or hamstring curls, or that lady with the barbell is doing a deadlift, an RDL. That's how we're going to isolate those hamstrings and glutes a little bit more. We also call those hip dominated movements because your knees pretty much, in general, or knee dominated movements, I should say, because you're going to be bending at the knee, pulling that knee in. Okay. But you're also rotating through the hip still. Hip rotation kind of has to happen in all of these lower body examples. So planes of motion, right? So what I said, like a bicep curl, most people tend to train in the sagittal plane. So sagittal plane is splitting my body into left and right. Okay. So I'm moving in that plane. The plane's right here. So I'm moving within that plane. The most neglected tends to be rotational or transverse. That's why we do that a lot in the gym. And then frontal. So that means the lateral movements, like a lateral raise or lunging to the side versus just front to back. So that's why in class we'll spend a lot of time doing those because we know people are neglecting those. Examples again, right here. Sagittal plane is what everybody thinks of, right? Squat front to back, bicep curl is front to back. But what gets neglected are those other two, frontal and transverse. So transverse is those rotationals, like I mentioned. And then last but not least here, rest and recovery, super important. Because if we don't rest and we don't feel good, we're gonna end up skipping a workout or something like that, and that's gonna mess with our routine that we just tried to set in the first part of this class or presentation, and what we're gonna do, what you're gonna do after you leave this. So, getting rid of that muscle pain and soreness, giving your muscle the time to rebuild, so protein and all that good stuff, and then preventing injury. We don't want to overtrain. Good rule of thumb, give yourself 48 hours before training the same muscle group at least. So if I did upper push on Monday, let's try to wait till at least Wednesday to do that muscle group again. And then some recovery tactics here as we wrap up. Recovery also means sleep and nutrition. Okay. Not just stretching, not just massage or foam rolling. Okay. Sleeping at least 7 to 8 hours a night. Hydrate at minimum. This is on the lower end for sure. Half an ounce of water per pound of body weight a day. We'd like to see people closer to 1 ounce of water per pound of body weight. And then you'll see on that right hand side what you need to recover. Keep in mind, this is just after a workout. This is not daily protein intake. Okay. So, for daily protein intake, you're going to want to think, I like to think about more, um, if you're active, zero point 0.7, zero point 0.7, 0.75 grams of protein per body weight per day. Okay. This is just that 15 to 20 for somebody who's 120 or 150 pounds. That's just for after your workout. And then they get a bad rep, but you got to have carbs or you're not going to have energy throughout the day after your workout. You're going to feel like crap. So protein and carbs, looking for those types of snacks after your workout are going to help tremendously with your recovery. You're going to feel better, have more energy after your workouts, and then you're going to feel less sore and all that good stuff too when you combine it with your foam rolling, your trigger point, your massage, your chiropractor's appointments, and your rest days. And then finally, just listen to your body, right? If it's one of those days, it's just not feeling it. Maybe we can't do our full routine. Maybe we can go for a walk, something a lot more easier, and still get that motion in. And I think that's the last slide.